Ryan meets a real showman, Phil Morris.
In movie theaters all over the country, the warnings were posted. Dr. Evil was coming to town. Wild-eyed kids with crew cuts and ponytails crammed movie houses with the expectation of being scared half to death by a mesmerizing master of illusion in a red fez named Phil Morris. For the man who would one day own one of the most successful costume distributorships in the Southeast, Morris Costumes, it all began in Kalamazoo.
Well, I started performing magic at about age 7. And Kalamazoo, Michigan is located very close to a little town called Colon, Michigan, which is the magic capital of the world. The magicians came from all over the world to have their magic assembled there for their shows. And I met Edgar Bergen over there while performing magic and became interested in ventriloquism, and both of them became a hobby, and then later on became a profession with me.
Practicing his magic on the side, young Phil Morris toured the country as publicity director for the then well-known cowboy star, Lash LaRue.
I was a very young person, and I'm surprised that, as I look back now, that Lash gave me that responsibility. But I accepted it well and enjoyed it and learned a great deal about show business and business itself.
Show business ran deep in Phil's blood, and it wasn't long before he decided to expand his horizons.
There was a period in my life which I thought it would be great fun to be a stuntman. And so I worked out all these series of stunts to perform at festivals and amusement parks and other places throughout the United States. One thing is that I was actually buried alive. We dug a grave 6 foot deep and placed me in a coffin and covered the coffin with dirt, and we had a communication system with a two-way doorbell system, and remained down there for long periods of time. But 8 hours in a coffin buried underneath the ground seems like an eternity. And you can actually hear the vibrations and so forth coming through the earth of cars traveling by and other heavy equipment. But
and always in the back of your mind, there must have been that little fear that everybody would say, well, this is boring, let's go home, and leave you there, right?
That's right. You knew that it was not going to happen, but you always felt that possibly someone would say, well, it's time for lunch, let's go. Or that the ground below you was going to let go and you would fall into an underground cavern or well, and no one would know about it until 4 or 5 hours later when they'd go to dig you up. I also drove cars blindfolded. We traveled around the country in promotion of a motion picture called X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, with Ray Milland. And I drove cars through heavy traffic or through optical courses. As a matter of fact, I one time drove the car that won the Pan American Road Race, and I drove it in a stock car race. I also performed a stunt called Burned Alive, in which I would be laying on the ground and covered with a eave trough, or a horse watering trough, and that was stacked with straw, and then gasoline poured on that and lit. And I would remain in the core of this enormous fire until the fire burned down, and the fire department then used hoses to fight their way through and to pull me out of this, out of all this burning rubbish. But that again is a very scary experience.
Were you ever injured doing any of this stuff?
Well, a few minor injuries, but I think I came to my senses before any serious injuries and decided not to be a stuntman.
In 1959, Phil Morris brought his talents to Charlotte, North Carolina television, starring on Captain Phil's Secret Island, and then joining Jim Patterson, Big Bill Ward, and Fred Kirby, the Singing Cowboy, on WBTV's Three Ring Circus.
Also, while I was doing this, I created a character called Dr. Evil. We had a show on Friday nights. As a matter of fact, it's in the same segment that Star Trek is in now. And we would act as a host for the old Frankenstein films and Dracula films, and it was a very, very successful show. So while I was doing this and had created this character, of Dr. Evil, it became so successful that we started playing motion picture theaters in this immediate area as the character, and the attendance was just unbelievable, the business that we did with the show. So we then started touring the show and went all over the United States.
When Phil's children were old enough to start school, he and his wife began a costume rental shop in the basement of their Charlotte home. But that didn't end Phil's show business career. While his wife ran the business, he continued to tour the country as a master of the magic arts and became heavily involved with circus work. And through it all, from those beginnings in Kalamazoo when the showbiz bug first bit, Phil Morris has done it his way.
When I was in school, I had a teacher tell me, magic is fun, ventriloquism is fun, being in show business is fun, but it should be just a hobby. That there is no way that you could possibly make a living in show business. And I think that's probably the worst advice that I'd ever had.
Phil Morris, magician, ventriloquist, stuntman, showman, businessman. A life of few regrets and a lot of fun.
Very, very rewarding and very rare that you have someone who's having fun and making a living at it.
The moral of that story may be that too many of us take life too seriously. Phil Morris has made it big, meeting life with a sense of humor. We'll be back with more in a minute. Going to head over toward the kitchen.